Hook for viewers: what would you do if a starving child tugged at your coat and begged you for just one chance to shine your shoes? Would you ignore him? Or would you stop and listen? Today, you're about to hear the story of a boy who had nothing, and a billionaire who had everything. But fate brought them face to face on one rainy afternoon, and what happened next will change the way you see kindness forever. Stay until the end, because the boy who was ignored by thousands just might surprise you. The clouds gathered above the busy city like a silent army, gray and heavy, ready to pour down onto the people below. Cars honked impatiently, shoes splashed through puddles, umbrellas tangled in the wind, but amidst all that noise, one small voice rose above it, trembling, desperate. "Please, sir, please, let me shine your shoes." He was no older than 8, his shirt torn at the sleeves, his shorts clinging to his thin legs, soaked from the cold drizzle that fell without mercy. His hands clutched a rag, more whole than cloth now, and a tin of cheap black polish. His eyes, wide and sunken, told a story of hunger far deeper than the growl in his belly. He had been walking the streets since dawn, trying to find someone, anyone, who might let him work for a few coins, maybe enough for a single piece of bread. But all he'd received were cold shoulders, turned backs, and pitying glances. Until now, the man he had approached wasn't just anyone. His name was Raymond Veller, the city's most untouchable billionaire. Founder of 100 tech companies, owner of skyscrapers, yachts, and private jets. His face was on the cover of every business magazine, his quotes plastered on every entrepreneur's dream board. To most people, he was a god in a suit. But to the boy, he was just a man, with muddy shoes. The boy's voice cracked again. "Please, sir. Just 5 minutes. I can make them shine like new." Raymond looked down, confused. At first, he thought the child was just another beggar. But then he saw the Polish tin. The cloth. The boy wasn't asking for money, he was asking for work. Raymond hesitated. His driver stood behind him, impatient, holding the umbrella. His assistant was already murmuring about being late for the next meeting. But something in the boy's eyes made Raymond pause. A flicker of something he hadn't seen in years, maybe not since he'd been a hungry boy himself. "What's your name?" Raymond asked. The boy's face lit up, just a little. "Sammy. My name is Sammy, sir." Raymond didn't know why he did it. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the rain. But he nodded and stepped under the awning. "All right, Sammy. 5 minutes." The assistant gasped. The driver frowned. But Sammy's heart leapt. He knelt instantly, trembling, his small hands moving fast, expertly, over the leather of Raymond's expensive shoes. He worked with precision, scrubbing, polishing, buffing, like every stroke meant something. And to him, it did. Because to Sammy, this was not just a shoe. This was his chance. As he worked, Raymond asked him questions. "Where are your parents?" Sammy paused. "Mama died last year. Papa left before that." Raymond's brow furrowed. "You live on the street?" Sammy nodded, still working. "Sometimes under the bridge. Sometimes behind the bakery. Depends if the guards chase me away." 5 minutes passed. 10. Sammy finished, breathless, wiping away the last speck of dirt. The shoes gleamed like mirrors. Raymond stared at them, surprised. "You did all this without real tools?" Sammy smiled, shy. "Just what I could find in the trash." Raymond pulled out a crisp bill and handed it to him. "Here. For the job." Sammy looked at the note. It was more than he'd ever held. 1,000 rupee note. His hands shook. Are you sure, sir?" Raymond didn't answer right away. Instead, he crouched down to Sammy's level. "You worked hard. You earned it." Sammy couldn't hold back the tears. Not because of the money, but because someone had seen him. Someone had spoken to him like a human. "Thank you, sir, thank you so much." But that wasn't the end. As Raymond stood, he looked at his assistant. "Cancel the meeting. I need to go somewhere." The assistant protested. "But sir, the investors, they can wait." Raymond turned back to Sammy. "Come with me." The boy blinked. "Where?" "To eat. I assume you're hungry." Sammy nodded so fast it almost looked painful. They drove to the fanciest restaurant in the city. Waiters stared. Patrons gawked. A billionaire, walking in with a street boy. But Raymond didn't care. He ordered the biggest meal on the menu. Sammy's eyes widened as the plates arrived. Meats, rice, naan, desserts he couldn't pronounce. He ate like it was a dream. But halfway through, he stopped. Is it okay if I save some for later? He asked quietly. For my friend. He's hungry too. Raymond looked at him, stunned. Even now, when he had more than enough, he was thinking of someone else. That night, Raymond made a decision. One that would change not just Sammy's life, but his own. He took Sammy in, sent him to school, gave him a room, food, safety. Years passed. Sammy didn't waste a second. He studied harder than anyone, always remembering the boy he used to be. He built apps, sold products, started coding. At 18, he launched his own company, with Raymond as his first investor. And you know what? It became a success. A global hit. Sammy, the boy who once begged to shine shoes, became a millionaire before 21. But he never forgot. Not the rain, not the shoes, not the hunger. He built shelters, funded schools, helped kids just like him. And every time he passed a child on the street, he would stop. He would kneel. He would say, "What's your name?" Because he knew, every name held a story. And every story deserved a chance. If this story moved you, even a little, then please, help us share it. Like this video, so others see what kindness can do. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire, heal, and remind us all of the power of compassion. Your one click can help this story reach the heart that needs it most. The world called him a prodigy. The headlines read, "From street to CEO, the billionaire boy, the ragged genius." But to Sammy, he was still just that hungry kid with a shoe rag in his back pocket, a quiet reminder of where he came from. Years had passed since that rainy afternoon when he met Raymond Veller, the man who not only gave him food and shelter but gave him something even more valuable, belief. Belief that he could matter. That he could rise. That he wasn't invisible. And now, at 23, standing at the helm of one of the world's fastest growing humanitarian tech startups, Sammy had all the success one could dream of. He had offices across continents, a dedicated team, partnerships with global charities, and more money than he could ever spend. But none of it ever distracted him from the one mission that burned like a fire in his chest: to find kids like him, still out there, still waiting for someone to look them in the eye and say, "I see you." One evening, as golden light poured over the city from a setting sun, Sammy stood on the rooftop of his HQ, sipping tea, lost in thought. His assistant approached quietly. "Mr. Sammy, there's someone downstairs asking for you. Says it's urgent." Sammy furrowed his brow. "Who is it?" "A boy. Says his name is Haroon. Looks like you, years ago." Without a second's hesitation, Sammy raced down the elevator. And there he was, barefoot, eyes hollow, cheeks sunken, a tiny bundle of nerves holding a cracked shoeshine tin. "Please, sir, I'll make them shine like mirrors," Haroon whispered. Sammy's heart clenched. It was as if the universe had sent him a mirror. He knelt, smiled gently, and said, "I know that rag. I used to have one just like it." Haroon blinked. You were like me." Sammy nodded. "Worse, maybe. But someone gave me a chance. And I think, it's time I do the same for you." Haroon didn't understand. Not at first. But within days, he was showered, clothed, and enrolled in school. At night, he stayed in the guest house beside Sammy's mansion, and every evening, they'd talk over dinner, not about money or success but about dreams. Haroon dreamed of building a place where no child had to sleep hungry. Sammy said, "Then let's do it." And so began a new chapter, not just for them, but for hundreds of children. They launched the Second Chance Shelter program, small, solar-powered, tech-enabled shelters in the heart of slums. Inside were beds, food, clean water, books, computers, and most importantly, hope. Sammy's story went viral again. Not because he flaunted wealth, but because he used it to wipe away someone else's tears. But not everyone was inspired. Some elites began to whisper, "He's doing this for fame. He's just lucky." Others in the corporate world rolled their eyes. "Saving street kids won't scale like stocks do," one sneered at a business gala. Sammy ignored them. But one day, something happened that tested his spirit like never before. Raymond Veller, his mentor, his guardian, the man who changed his life, collapsed during a speech. Rushed to the hospital. Diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. The prognosis wasn't good. Sammy sat beside his hospital bed, tears threatening to fall. "You saved me," he whispered. I didn't just save you, Raymond smiled faintly. You gave my life meaning again. I had everything, but I was empty, until I met you. The next few weeks were quiet. The world outside continued in its noise and greed, but inside that hospital room, stories were exchanged, laughter was shared, and love, real love, poured out in waves. Before Raymond passed, he signed a handwritten letter and placed it in Sammy's hand. Don't open it now, he said, open it when the city tries to break your spirit. And then he was gone. The funeral was massive, attended by world leaders, business tycoons, the media. But amid the flowers and speeches, only one man stood silently, holding a ragged cloth in his coat pocket. That night, as rain fell once again, Sammy walked the same streets where he once begged. He knelt beside every child he saw, not with money, but with presence. He listened. He remembered, and as the city tried to forget its poor, its orphans, its laboring children, Sammy leaned in harder. He opened 5 more shelters. Created a platform that matched street kids with sponsors globally. Taught coding to children in slums. Built low-cost tablets powered by solar energy. But it wasn't easy. The backlash came in waves. Bureaucrats blocked permits. Corrupt officials wanted bribes. Rival companies accused him of laundering money. The media tried to spin scandals. Investors pulled out. His team shrank. And one night, in a small room with no light but the moon, Sammy sat alone, broken, almost ready to give up. That's when he remembered the letter. Raymond's letter. With shaking fingers, he unfolded it. It read, My boy, when I gave you that 1,000-rupee note, I didn't just see a child. I saw fire. You reminded me what it meant to believe. This world will try to put out that fire. Let it try. But don't stop. Because one day, the same people who doubted you, will beg to understand how you did it. Keep building. Keep believing. And never stop asking the next child, what's your name? Sammy cried like he hadn't in years. But those weren't tears of defeat, they were a cleansing. A rebirth. He rose the next morning with new fire. And the world saw it. Donations returned. The public rallied behind him. Celebrities, athletes, and activists joined his cause. A documentary about his life won global awards. And then, something unimaginable happened. Haroon, the boy who once offered to shine his shoes, built a learning app for poor kids and launched it under Sammy's mentorship. It reached 10 million downloads in 1 year. At the press conference, Haroon stood at the podium and said, I wouldn't be here if he hadn't stopped to ask me my name. Sammy, standing in the crowd, couldn't help but smile through tears. Because that was the legacy he wanted, not wealth, not applause, but a chain reaction of compassion. And so, today, we ask you, the viewer watching this, what would you do if a starving child tugged at your coat? Would you walk away? Or would you stop, and ask them their name? If this story moved your heart, don't let it stop here. Like this video so it reaches someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more true stories of human kindness, courage, and transformation. Your support helps us keep sharing the stories that matter, the ones that can change a life. Maybe even your own. There are moments in life that seem small at the time, barely a spark, and yet, years later, you realize they lit a fire that changed the world. One of those sparks was a hungry boy named Sammy who once begged to shine a billionaire's shoes. That moment, drenched in rain, covered in mud, changed 2 lives. But this story, it doesn't end with one boy rising. No, this is about what happens when a single act of kindness becomes a tidal wave, when the child who was once overlooked begins to lift a generation out of the darkness. Years after Haroon launched his education app and Sammy's second chance shelters multiplied across the country, the movement was unstoppable. Children who once begged for food were now becoming doctors, engineers, and poets. One girl from Lahore wrote a book about her experience in the shelter, how she learned to read at age 10 and went on to win a scholarship to Oxford. A boy from Karachi, once a pickpocket, now ran a robotics lab and employed 42 people. And yet, through it all, Sammy remained the same, quiet, grounded, still wearing his late mother's locket under his shirt and keeping the old shoe rag in his desk drawer. But just when it seemed life had finally bent in the right direction, an earthquake struck the northern region. Thousands were displaced, children orphaned, schools turned to rubble. Sammy didn't hesitate. He loaded trucks with blankets, food, tech devices, water, and drove there himself. No bodyguards, No press. Just boots in the mud, hands in the rubble, heart on fire. That's where he found her. Barefoot, silent, standing next to the ruins of a collapsed school. Her name was Layla. She didn't speak for days. The trauma had stolen her words. But one evening, under a tree, as Sammy was wrapping a bandage around her bruised hand, she finally whispered, "They're all gone." Her family, her friends, her home. Sammy didn't try to comfort her with lies. Instead, he took her hand and said, "I once lost everything too. But losing everything, sometimes means you're ready to build anything." Layla followed him back to the shelter zone. Months passed. She didn't just recover, she thrived. She taught the younger kids how to draw, helped cook meals, even built a tiny library out of donated books. Sammy watched with pride, because he knew, she would be next. Next to rise. Next to rebuild. Next to become the miracle someone else would need someday. Meanwhile, the world took notice. The UN invited Sammy to speak. Hollywood called. A filmmaker wanted to tell his story. And the president of the country awarded him the nation's highest civilian honor. On that stage, Sammy didn't talk about money or success. He told them about shoes. He said, "It wasn't the rag or the polish that got me here. It was the man who stopped. Who didn't walk past me. Who asked me my name. And that's all I ask you to do. In your city, on your street, when you see someone you'd normally ignore, ask them their name. It costs nothing, but it can change everything." The applause thundered. But fame brought pressure. Not everyone was happy. Corrupt contractors wanted a cut of the shelter funding. Politicians demanded credit. One even threatened to shut down the project if Sammy didn't endorse his campaign. When Sammy refused, mysterious inspections began. False allegations were spread. Donors hesitated. Protesters appeared outside the shelters with signs reading, "Fraud. This is a scam." And once again, the weight of the world sat on Sammy's shoulders. Alone in his office one night, he turned to Raymond's second letter, one he had saved for years, unopened. In shaky handwriting, it said, "When you feel surrounded, remember, you are not. Every child you helped, every life you touched, is standing behind you now. Not in front of cameras. Not in boardrooms. But in spirit. In prayers. In gratitude. Stand tall, my boy. Because your roots are deep." He folded the letter and walked out into the rain, just like the one that poured the day he first met Raymond. This time, though, he wasn't a child. He was a storm. He faced the press head-on, showed every audit, every report, every bank record. He took critics on live tours of the shelters. He spoke with calm, but his voice was fire. One reporter asked, "Aren't you tired of trying to save the world?" Sammy looked straight at the camera and said, "I'm not trying to save the world. Just one child at a time. That's how the world is saved." Donations came flooding back. A tech giant partnered with his app. And most shockingly, the president who once ignored his work passed a new national law, the Second Chance Bill, guaranteeing every street child access to food, shelter, and education, funded by the state, managed by Sammy's foundation. Tears streamed down his face as he signed the agreement, surrounded by children he once walked beside in the dark. But the moment that broke him, came quietly. Late one night, a knock on his door. He opened it to find an old man, weathered by time, holding a pair of dusty shoes. "I heard what you did," the man said. "I used to be like you. Poor, lost, angry. But I never got my chance. I've lived 70 years wondering what